Welcome to this session of Biographia Literaria by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, where we would be looking into several aspects of Chapter 4. Before we move on to Chapter 4, let us look into the age of Coleridge, the age in which Coleridge lived and how the age influenced him. The word Romanticism as a movement in England includes a range of developments in art, literature, music and philosophy beginning in the late 18th century and lasting up to the early 19th century. In 1762, Jean-Jacques Rousseau stated that man is born free and everywhere he is in chains in his The Social Contract. Dissatisfied intellectuals and artists of the Romantic period challenged the establishment and announced the need for major transitions in society. In England, the Romantic poets played a pivotal role in bringing about a change in society. The desire for liberty, the belief that the individual is important, and the conviction that people should not blindly follow ideals but question the dominant conventions and rules were the precepts emphasized. The Romantics denounced rationalism and order associated with the preceding neoclassical period and stressed the importance of expressing genuine personal feelings. They felt it was their duty to use their poetry to inform and inspire others and to effect changes in the society. On the political front, this was a time of physical confrontation. Violent rebellion in parts of Europe and the New World made people aware of chaos and lawlessness across the English Channel, and the British government feared occurrences of such magnitude. The early Romantic poets were ardent supporters of the French Revolution until the bloody reign of terror upset their views and adversely affected their sympathies. Let us now move on into trying to find out what exactly Coleridge did in his career. The mammoth person as Samuel Coleridge, his literary career spanning to several years. Coleridge's literary career could be split into 4 periods. The first period extends up to his meeting with Wordsworth in 1797. He had not yet realized himself, and his literary output was mainly experimental in nature. The important works of this period are The Fall of Robespierre, To a Friend, Ode on the Departing Year, and France an Ode. The second period begins with the summer of 1797 and ends in 1802. This is the period when some of his best literary works were produced. To name them, The Ancient Mariner, Christabel Parts 1 and 2, Love, Remorse, Dejection an Ode, and Frost at Midnight. He wrote several articles for the Morning Post, delivered lectures of a high order of merit, and translated the German Wallenstein. The third period, spanning 1803 to 1817, was a confused and vexed period in his life. Coleridge suffered ill health, became an addict to opium, underwent domestic unhappiness, and all these together affected his life that witnessed a decline in his artistic intensity and contribution to literature. During this period, he brought out the periodical The Friend, delivered a series of lectures on Shakespeare, published The Statesman's Manual, and the most remarkable Biographia Literaria in criticism. He included articles on his reflections on theology. The fourth phase of his career spans the last 17 years of his life. Under the care of Dr. Gilman, he recovered some of his powers and wrote lay sermons, the Constitution, Confessions, and Notes on English Divines. Let us now move on to some of Coleridge's critical works. Coleridge is regarded as one of the greatest poet critics that England has ever produced. His bulk of literary criticism is contained in his Biographia Literaria and Lectures on Shakespeare and Other Poets. Lectures on Shakespeare and Other Poets was delivered by him between 1808 and 1819. His examination of Shakespeare's plays and the poems by other writers is acute, logical, suggestive, and stimulating. Every work of art he sees to be an organic, developed whole that is subject to the laws of its own existence. Coleridge revolts against the Augustine concept of poetry as art to instruct. For him, the aim of poetry is to provide pleasure, I quote, through the medium of beauty, unquote. His lectures could be considered impressionistic, romantic criticism. Coleridge is not judicious in his approach to criticism, but rather he gives his own reactions and responses to the works of Shakespeare. Let us now find out who are the persons who influenced Coleridge in formulating his theory. Coleridge's view on arts, literature, and philosophy were influenced by Hartley and his associationist psychology and the German transcendental and idealist philosophy propounded by Lessing, Kant, Hegel, Schelling, and Schiller. Coleridge was acquainted with Wordsworth in 1796. He developed an interest in imagination from his association with Wordsworth. During the early stages of his development, he came under the influence of David Hartley and David Hume, the associationists, who gave a mechanistic view of the formation of human character and personality. Sense perceptions, impressions, and sensations are compounded by the mind into ideas, and simple ideas are compounded into ideas of greater complexity. According to them, the human mind or imagination is reduced merely to a passive and inactive recipient of impressions and sensations from the outside world. After the German tour he had undertaken with Wordsworth between 1779 and 1800, Coleridge came under the influence of the German philosophers who proposed a more active view of the imagination. For them, the human mind or imagination is not a mere passive agent, but an active and creative power. Coleridge rejected the views of the associationists and ascribed to the Kantian view of imagination to be an esemplastic power, which means an active power that shapes, molds, and recreates. Art is not a mere imitation of nature, but a recreation of it. Beauty is nothing objective. It is imparted to the external world by the observer. In the apprehension of beauty, the soul projects itself into the outside forms of nature. In this way, the external is made internal and vice versa. The soul of the artist fuses with the external realities and transforms and recreates the ideas. The ideas that are so formed get fused, they are united in the mind of the artist. Coleridge's theory of imagination is largely derived from the German idealist philosophers. Coleridge was ingenuous in that what he borrowed, he made it entirely his own. His originality is seen in the way he selected the parts from the original, arranged, ordered and modified the borrowed material and then transformed it into a product that became his unique contribution to the theory of imagination. Let us now move on to the Biographia Literaria. Biographia Literaria is considered to be Samuel Coleridge's unplanned masterpiece. The critic J. A. Appleyard is of the view that Biographia Literaria is, I quote him, unread and largely unreadable. Coleridge described Biographia as an immethodical miscellany of life and opinions. An example of how both critics and readers prefer to respond to the critical observation of Coleridge becomes clear when one critic mentions that Biographia Literaria has no aesthetic unity. This could be deciphered from the history of its conception. According to Coleridge, Biographia Literaria began as a preface to the edition of poems he was preparing in 1815, which eventually became Sibylline Leaves, a collection of poems. On 29th July 1815, he announced that the preface to the poems had been extended to an autobiographical literaria containing his opinions on poetry and poetical criticism and the account of the controversy concerning Wordsworth's poems and theory of poetry. A discourse on the powers of association and on the generic difference between fancy and imagination was not added. By 17th September, when his work was completed, the philosophical part, which had originally been meant to comprise of a few pages, assumed substantial proportions. As a result, he suggested a more comprehensive title, Biographical Sketches of My Literary Life, Principles and Opinions, chiefly on the subjects of poetry and philosophy. This was published in 2 volumes in 1817. Another edition of the work, to which Coleridge's daughter Sarah appended notes and supplementary biographical material, was published in 1847. The first volume of the book recounts the author's friendship with the poets Robert Southey and William Wordsworth. Coleridge goes on to describe the influences on his philosophical development from his early teachers to such philosophers as Immanuel Kant, Johann Fichte and Friedrich von Schelling. This section includes his well-known discussion of the difference between fancy and imagination. In the second volume, Coleridge concentrates on literary criticism and proposes theories about the creative process and the historical sources of the elements of poetry. Let us now move on to the origin of Biographia Literaria. Biographia Literaria is the outcome of Coleridge's arduous labor for 6 months. Its manuscript was completed by September 1815 and was published in July 1817. Before Coleridge had decided on writing the Biographia Literaria, he had thought of writing works containing his philosophical and literary views. In 1798, the first edition of the Lyrical Ballads was published, which contained the poems composed by both Wordsworth and Coleridge. Coleridge persuaded Wordsworth to write a preface for the second edition of the Lyrical Ballads and to present his literary theory in it. Coleridge said that the preface was half a child of my own brain. He had thought of writing the preface but gave up the idea subsequently. As time passed on, Coleridge began to differ from Wordsworth's theory of poetic diction. In his Biographia Literaria, he not only attacks this theory but also says that except in a few poetical passages which are not of a higher order, Wordsworth does not follow his edicts. A considerable part of Biographia Literaria is Coleridge's adverse criticism of Wordsworth's theory of poetic diction. Wordsworth, of course, disagreed with Coleridge, especially because it was Coleridge who had encouraged him to present the theory of poetic diction in the preface. Coleridge had planned a biography of Lessing and had gone to Germany to collect materials for it. He wanted to write a treatise which would combine his twin interests in philosophy and poetry. Shortly after, Coleridge changed his mind and decided to write a study of contemporary poetry and the other selection of poems. In 1803, he decided to write his thesis or book in the autobiographical form. In July 1815, Coleridge had written the first part of the Biographia, that is chapters 1 to 13. This part of the book contained primarily metaphysical inquiry and discussions on philosophy and poetry in accordance with the plan he had framed during the years from 1800 to 1803. Having completed the metaphysical portions of the Biographia, which he then regarded as a complete book, Coleridge started writing a preface to it, which grew to enormous proportions and was soon as long as the book itself. The second part of the Biographia Literaria, with chapters 14 to 24, became the second part of the book that contained an examination of Wordsworth's theories of language and subject matter of poetry. The link between the two parts of the book is the theory of imagination. Biographia Literaria was composed at that period of time when his health was at its worst and his mind subjected to the influence of bodily disorder. Central to the narrative is the apprehension about the reunion of the head and the heart, concern with this reconciliation in general, and a discussion of the imagination. We now move on to the description of Biographia Literaria. Coleridge had initially intended Biographia Literaria to be a short preface to the collection of his poems, Sibylline Leaves, a collection of poems published in 1817. However, it extended into a 2-volume autobiography integrating memoir, philosophy, religion, literary theory, and was profoundly inspired by German criticism, evaluation, and interpretation of literature. In 1906, the poet Arthur Symons called the work, I quote, the greatest book of criticism in England and one of the most annoying books in any language, unquote. This is because it appeared scholarly and incomprehensible. Biographia Literaria is a work on literary aesthetics or literary theory. It is considered to be a work of immense value and a record of the poet's literary upbringing. But the work includes certain aspects of philosophy as well. There are digressions from his theoretical principles too. The first 16 chapters are highly philosophical and entirely irrelevant to his conception of literary theory. He discusses the poetic theory of his friend Wordsworth in the last chapters, and in the last 7 chapters of the book he makes a remarkable demonstration of his critical prowess. Coleridge analyzes Wordsworth's theory, which is based on his conception of romantic theory. We now have a recap of what we have done so far. Romantic poets had a crucial role to play in England during the Romantic period. They believed that an individual had the right to live according to his own beliefs. They infused the spirit of inquiry and opposed the neoclassic tradition. Coleridge was a poet who brought out his best compositions during the period in England. Coleridge is regarded to be one of the greatest poet critics that England has ever produced. His literary criticism is contained in his Biographia Literaria and lectures on Shakespeare and other poets. The German transcendental and idealistic philosophy propounded by Lessing, Kant, Hegel, Schelling and Schiller affected his thoughts. The influence of David Hartley and David Hume, the associationists, changed his concept of the outside world. Coleridge rejected the views of the associationists and adhered to the Kantian view of imagination to be a power which shapes, molds and recreates art. Biographia Literaria is a work on literary aesthetics or literary theory, which not only provides an insight into Coleridge's principles on art and philosophy, but also analyzes Wordsworth's theory of poetry. To enable you to understand this module better, we have a few questions and exercises for you. Please move on to these questions and exercises that would give you a better outlook on what Coleridge actually wanted to include in his Biographia Literaria. Until we meet next time, thank you.